This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include Peg O'Connell, political activist and analyst and lobbyist; John Hood from the John Locke Foundation; Chris Fitzsimon from NC Policy Watch; and former House Speaker Josephus Mavretic. Well, this Labor Day edition promises to be interesting as we talk about legislators coming back to Raleigh this week to override Governor McCrory's vetoes. We'll talk about the persistent backlog in the SBI crime lab and repercussions from that. And we'll discuss the recent ACT scores our rising high school seniors received, and close the show by asking our panel to tell us something we don't know. Should be interesting, so let's get started. Lawmakers are due back in town September 3rd to consider overriding Governor McCrory's veto of two bills they passed. We want to talk about the process and the politics of these votes. Joe, you served as House Speaker. Both these bills that McCrory vetoed originated in the House, so they're going to vote first. What's been going on since that veto in the Republican and Democratic House, and with the governor, for that matter, since he vetoed the bills?
Well, first of all, I think that in both caucuses, but particularly the House, there are a lot of second and first term members who are going to get a real education in hardball politics. The second thing is I think that the governor ought to be glad that it's going to the House first, because I think Senator Rucho would enjoy sticking a pin in the governor over this issue. There's a short term and a long term that our viewers ought to be thinking about. The short term is that you may want to switch your vote because you've had breakfast with the governor and can see things in a little different way. You may, if you voted for it, you may want to switch your vote if you think it's a way to get a jab in on somebody. In the long run, I think whether or not these go to court and what the court decisions will be would reflect whether good judgment or bad judgment on the governor's part. But our viewers ought to take away from this topic, Tom, that the rule is 3/5 of those present and voting, not 120 members in the House and 50 in the Senate. And that's 3/5 of those present and voting, and that's critical.
Chris, the governor's been working as hard. He sent out Facebook messages. No doubt he's been working the phones. If the legislature overrides these vetoes, isn't that a message that he doesn't have the clout or the friends to change the votes? Doesn't it make it look weak?
Well, I think it does. And it's interesting, the Facebook appeals he was making, he took those down. But if you went to the Facebook page, the comments were overwhelmingly negative, which I think also contributed to the fact that one of the reasons that he took the ads down. He clearly is working on it. News accounts from around the state have said that it looks like most people are saying now, the people who are saying, and a lot aren't, but the people who are saying say they're going to vote the same way, and they don't have any problem. If they voted for this bill a few months ago, they'll vote for it again on both of these things. So there's a lot of stories here. There are the issues of drug testing for welfare benefits, for making E-Verify a little more, whether or not temporary labor should be able to get an exemption for 9 months of E-Verify. Very important issues. I think one's a good idea, one's not. But I think the story out of this session is going to be the politics of it and what happens to Governor McCrory's power.
Well, I want to ask about that, Peg, because I mean, those of us here in Raleigh that talk about this and study this and all the time, we're very into this subject. But what are Joe and Jane Tarhill thinking about? Do they even care about this? Do they know about these vetoes? Does it make any difference to them? And if the governor does get overruled, will it make any difference?
Is it overridden, I think?
Overridden, yes. Overwrought. I knew it was in there somewhere.
I think probably the average John Q. Public in Rockingham County or someplace like that is probably not tracking this the same way we do. But, you know, everything that happens here is not tracked the same way we look at it. I think it's kind of interesting, though, and I went back and actually looked. I didn't see the administration making a big deal about either of these pieces of legislation as they were moving. And, of course, they moved quickly. Everything moved quickly. But that would have been the time to say, I don't think these are good ideas, not just getting out your veto stamp now just to say you got it out.
John, what is this going to do? We talked about what is this going to do to McCrory. What is this going to do to the relationship between the legislature and McCrory going forward? Will there be some repercussions on either side of this? I mean, might he try to get back at them, or might they realize they do hold all the cards and just run over him?
I think that whatever effect this may have on the relationship between McCrory and the legislature has already happened. It happened when the governor did the veto in the first place. I'm not sure it's going to make a whole lot of difference because I think that it's a foregone conclusion. If Joe says you had to be careful because you're not sure who shows up. I talked to a couple of members this week who aren't coming because they have pre-existing vacations and they're leaving for vacation. And they've all been urged.
How convenient.
Well, they've been urged, this is not going to matter because the margins are too big. But if you tell that to enough people, it might matter. What I would say about this is, one interesting part of it is that the governor managed to get to the right of, essentially, if you use conventional terms, one of the governor's veto puts him to the right of the legislature, and the other one puts him to the left of the legislature. Yeah. And I think that for the general public, it's hard to follow. I think people are generally probably in favor of drug testing for welfare beneficiaries, and I think it is on their list of priorities of maybe 20 issues. Yeah. It's about 20th.
Joe, final thought here. Okay. I know that the governor of North Carolina is traditionally not considered one of the strongest chief executives so far as the 50 states are concerned. But the governor still has an awful lot of power so far as naming judges, getting roads built, getting favors done in communities. Isn't that going to create some problems if these guys override him?
Absolutely. And I tried to allude that earlier about you got to watch the long-term effects. There's such a thing as taking the temperature. And in the short run, a veto, as John says, one a little bit to the right, one a little bit to the left, takes the temperature, and he may very well be doing this.
Well, you can watch NC Spin anytime you want. Just go to our website, ncspin.com, and click on the YouTube button on the right side of the page. We post each week's show on Friday, so you can view us anytime you like. And while at ncspin.com, be sure to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter, Spin Cycle, and follow us on Twitter at ncspintweets. 4 ways to keep the conversation going: ncspin.com, ncspin on Facebook, Twitter at ncspintweets, and Spin Cycle. We look forward to hearing from you. When we come back after these messages, we're going to talk about the SBI lab problems.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
People always ask us, don't you get tired of driving to the coast every day? We have never said yes. We enjoy bringing the fresh fish to those that don't have time to drive to the coast. The relationships that we have with fishermen in eastern North Carolina are more than business to us. It's more like family. They depend on us and we depend on them. We are proud to work with North Carolina fishermen to bring fresh fish from our dock to your table.
The North Carolina Medical Society is committed to a healthier North Carolina. We feel, as an organization representing over 14,000 physicians, that we have a responsibility and an obligation to help our citizens become more healthy. And by doing this, we want to help educate them about ways in which they need to keep themselves healthy through good nutrition, exercise, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. These ingredients will help not only individual citizens become and maintain a healthier outlook on their lives, but also help contribute to having a healthier state.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception: keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
We now return to NC Spin.
Attorney General Roy Cooper appears to be running for governor. Most agree he's been a pretty good AG for our state. But one source of problems for Cooper has been the SBI, especially the SBI crime lab. District attorneys are unanimous in saying it takes far too long to get the crime lab to get test results back to them, dragging out the judicial process, and in some cases, prompting dismissals of cases because the person arrested couldn't get try it in a reasonable time. Chris, let's just start with the political side of this. If Cooper, in fact, does decide to run for governor, how big a problem is the SBI going to be to him?
Well, I don't think it's any secret that this will be the issue I think he'll be attacked on the most by whoever his opponents or in the
both
primary.
In the primary, because we already know there's some primary opponents.
Well, that's right, and I think in the general election as well. So he's got, and Roy Cooper's a very smart guy and a good politician, so he clearly knows this. So I'm sure his folks have come up with an answer, but it is troubling. Part of it, I think you can assume, or you're going to hear that the lab wasn't adequately funded, which is true, but the problems at the lab have gone beyond that. And this will be one of the defining, I think, issues of his campaign.
John, Cooper asked former appeals court judge Joe John to head up the crime lab to try to clear up some of these problems and bring them back in. And Joe John is a very respected person. He's repeatedly said we don't have enough analysts. Now, the question is the legislature failing to fund more analysts to try to get back at Cooper, or don't they understand the severity of the problem?
They may believe that the budget is not being spent effectively, and that perhaps they don't have enough analysts because they're spending money in the department somewhere else inappropriately. This illustrates what I think is the problem with the Attorney General doing what he did, which is telegraphing very early that he's thinking about a gubernatorial run. It makes everything from now until 2016 political.
Yeah.
And, you can be speculating about it. And obviously, Cooper is a statewide elected Democrat, been elected several times, is a potential candidate, and that's understandable. But telegraphing it so early makes every dispute about the crime lab and everything else into a political dispute, and I don't think that helps him.
Peg, what I don't understand is this thing is just gumming up the whole judicial system because we can't get these test results back. Why haven't we heard some outcry from district attorneys and judges and sheriffs across the state?
Well, I think you did hear these people. They were down at the legislature saying there needs to be more resources in this lab so that we can move things along. There was a huge amount of money dropped on it in the last 4 years, and it's made things better.
We've actually got 6 fewer analysts now than we had 4 years ago.
Well, but still, they think they're throwing money at the problem, and it's getting better. I have to say, though, Roy Cooper had no opposition in this last AG's race, and this stuff about the crime lab has been going on for a long time.
Joe, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is in 2009, our Supreme Court ruled that if the defense asked for it, one of these crime lab analysts had to appear in court and testify. Now, that just further lengthens and delays the amount of time. Knowing that was going on, again, I asked the question, why hasn't the legislature been willing to respond to this?
I think that's not the best question. The question really is how you allocate your resources. It's a management issue. And the thing that comes to my mind is that when you start asking questions about the crime lab in the Justice Department, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Then you start asking questions about other management moves, other management skills, interpersonal relationships within the Justice Department, and I think that's what's going to be the major issues in his run.
We believe that a person has a right to a speedy trial, but due process, if we keep publicizing the fact that we've got instances where the crime lab isn't working and we're having to release people who are accused of drug and felony charges, how do you think the public is going to respond? What kind of confidence level is the public going to have in this?
I don't think the general public is following this issue very closely, but you wait. If there is a high-profile case of somebody who's either sort of, in the press convicted of something but let go because of a technicality, or maybe someone wrongfully convicted because of drug misuse in the crime lab, I think that will catapult this into a big story.
All right, I want to go around the table and just ask each of you to tell me fairly briefly, this is a lingering problem. What, if anything, do you think is going to come of it? Anything going to happen?
Well, I think we've seen people released from jail because the evidence there was either something inappropriate done or the evidence was tainted in some way. So I think if we are serious about making our justice system work, we've got to invest in this and we've got to do it right.
Well, I think that it's not just a crime lab. If you're talking about the problems of the criminal justice system, the court system is woefully underfunded, has been for 10 or 15 years. Technology, personnel, deputy.
But specifically about the crime lab.
I think it plays into the whole issue, which is we don't have enough resources, including at the crime lab, and I still think there's a debate about where it should be located.
Joe?
I think if you want to make the crime lab issue either go away or subside, you put some more folks over there and you do it now.
John?
Again, I think that the cases of the past, people have already internalized those. If we get additional cases, I think it's going to elevate this issue quite a bit.
After these messages, we're going to talk about the ACT scores.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
It's true. Farming is different than it was 50 years ago. We know consumers have questions about how our food is grown today. North Carolina livestock farmers want you to know that they're using the most responsible and caring farming practices to feed our state.
ncanimalag.com.
You trust your family physician to care for you and your family. We treasure that trust and are committed to providing the best care possible for all North Carolinians. It's time for Medicaid reform, but not without input from North Carolina's family physicians. Medicaid reform will impact health care for all of us. Tell state leaders you want your physician involved. We need Medicaid reform that's good for North Carolina. To sign our petition of support, visit rnchealthcare.com.
How bad do you want to become a champion? More than you want to breathe?
We see our student athletes and coaches' commitment to championships every day.
Your support enables us to create a competitive advantage that will help the Wolfpack compete for conference and national championships.
Our work at NC State is just beginning. We are asking more from ourselves, our players, and now we are asking more from you. What is your championship commitment?
We now return to NC Spin.
Do it tomorrow. As we pause for the Labor Day break, we head back to work and our children are back in school. Recently, we got our first grade, North Carolina's grade on the ACT college admission test. The national average is 20.9, and last year, our students scored 21.9 of a possible 36. But in 2012, state law required all high school juniors to take this exam. Our score was only 18.7. John, many have expressed disappointment with these scores, especially when comparing them to the national average. But how many other states have all their students take the test, and how did we fare compared to those who did have all the students take it?
That is absolutely the critical question, because you cannot compare states in something like SAT or ACT that have very different test-taking populations. You might have one state where 55% of the kids are taking a test, another state where only 10% take a test. You're not comparing apples to apples. So if you look at the 11 states where at least 95% of students take the ACT, North Carolina is number 11. So I'm not saying this is good news, it's bad news, but it is incorrect to say that our ACT score dropped because you're comparing two completely different test-taking populations. So the bottom line on this is if you look at those scores and they're reading and science and math and language arts, if you look at those and you combine them, you look at how many North Carolina students are prepared for college in all four subjects. I'm afraid that the number is about a fifth or less.
Well, I was getting ready to say, if you go back to the 2011 numbers, we scored 20.9 out of a possible 36. What that says is if 36 is college qualified and ready.
No, 36 is a perfect score.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not that bad, but it's bad enough.
But it still doesn't show a lot of college readiness, does it, Joe?
Well, you know, we keep making the same mistake, Tom. We keep saying, how many are ready to go to college? Well, we know that half are not going to college to start with. And we keep asking about tests. We got to stop doing that.
But President Obama, Chris, has been talking quite a bit of late about rigor in our schools. Doesn't this demonstrate that we need more rigor in our schools, that we're not doing as good a job as we need?
I mean, I think it demonstrates a lot of things. Surely we need more rigor in the schools. That's part of what the Common Core debate, which is very complicated, is about. But I do think it's important. This is the first year that all kids took the test. So most kids in North Carolina who took tests for a couple years ago were taking the SAT, which is a completely different test. Right. So I think we shouldn't be alarmed. Number one, we should be worried and concerned, but I don't think we should hit the panic button because one year all kids took the test and North Carolina didn't do quite as well as some states where everybody took the test. Let's measure this over a couple years.
But they already telegraphed, because they give a version of the test to younger kids, and they did that in North Carolina, and they've already telegraphed they expect our average score to rise next year.
Peg, whenever we have discussions about public schools, particularly when we have numbers that don't come back that look really great, people start trying to point the finger of blame and try to figure out where the blame is. Now, typically, the Democrats say that the blame is because we're not properly funding our schools. The Republicans are saying that the problem is that we are funding our schools, but the teachers aren't teaching and the students aren't performing and the system needs reform. Who's right and who's wrong?
Oh my gosh.
In 20 seconds or less.
And answer yes or no. Well, you know, I mean, everybody's got a piece of this pie. A part of it is you've just on this one test, you've got kids who've never taken a test like this, or they've only taken the mini test, and now you stick them in a room and tell them the rest of their life is going to depend on it. Half those kids are freaking out, even if they are going to college. So, in the kinds of things that are measured in the ACT, slightly different than the SAT, are college prep and college-bound stuff. So, if you're not going to college, the things that are tested are almost irrelevant to you.
So what should be our takeaway from this story?
But our graduation rates are up, and I think that's an important factor that we haven't even talked about.
We have talked about it.
We talked about it in a previous show, but that's actually part of the point, Peg, is that our graduation rate is up. We're graduating 80%, more than 80% of our kids, and the vast majority of them are not prepared for college. That's the story.
Final word, Joe, and we got 10 seconds.
Stop testing.
That's the quickest answer you ever gave me. When we come back, we're going to ask the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Is your business or trade organization looking for a great North Raleigh address? This beautiful, recently updated office building has 3 spacious offices perfect for law firms, accountants, agencies, and associations of any size. Our beautiful lobby boasts attractive finishes and unique Raleigh artwork. We provide ample parking and quick access to both 440 and 540 right at the corner of Falls of the Neuse and Spring Forest Road. Call us today at 919-832-1416 to schedule a tour with the owner.
North Carolina is a great place to live, work, and raise a family, but we consistently rank in the bottom third for state health. Poor health choices and inactivity cost our state $54 billion a year, dollars that could be saved through healthier living. We can do better, North Carolina. That's why NC Spin is working with health and community organizations to launch a Healthier NC, an education campaign and challenge to live healthier lives. Join us at ahealthiernc.com. Do you have questions about the foods you eat and the farmers that feed us? If so, register to attend the Food Dialogues North Carolina. This free panel discussion will include food and farming experts talking about what's on our plates, the importance of consumer choice, and how farming and food production have changed over the years. The Food Dialogues North Carolina is September 19th at the Raleigh Convention Center. Registration is free, but space is limited. Visit fooddialogues.com to register now.
We now return to NC Spin.
Recently, we closed the show by asking our panel to tell us something we didn't know. The response to this feature was very positive, and so we're going to continue it by asking each of our panelists to share with us something that might have been overlooked, something they've heard, something they've thought about, or unreported. John Hood, we'll begin with you. Tell us something we don't know.
Tom, the Program Evaluation Division of the North Carolina General Assembly is currently working on 2 governance studies in education, one of them of the University of North Carolina system and one of them of the Department of Public Instruction. Those reports will be coming out fairly soon, within the next few months, and I think they're going to stir a lot of debate in 2014.
You won't tell us how?
Well, I haven't read the reports yet, but from what I can gather, these will be significant findings about the governance of our education system.
Joe, tell us something we don't know.
Recently, the Department of Commerce unveiled a website called NC Works. It's probably the best of its kind in the country. It tries to match skill level of individuals with the skill levels required by employers, and they are having tens of thousands of hits, and it's probably the best thing that Governor McCrory has done.
Chris, tell us something we don't know.
Well, the veto session won't just be about overriding the governor and those two significant issues. There's a lot of subtext going on. Not only is House Speaker Tom Tillis running for the U.S. Senate, there's a lot of jockeying in the House to see who the next Speaker of the House is. That's also a factor in how this session will be conducted.
What's the inside running on that?
Well, I think Ruth Samuelson is clearly somebody who's running, and I think there'll be several others who will enter the race at some point.
All right. Tell us something we don't know, Peg.
Well, tucked into House Bill 74, which is the regulatory omnibus provision, was a small sentence that said that well permits that are not acted upon by the counties are deemed approved, even though the county hasn't inspected them. So people who are going to be digging wells may be digging them in the wrong places, so homeowners should beware.
All right. Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback and read our column, visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. We hope you'll join us next week when we take on more issues of interest to people of North Carolina. Until then, happy Labor Day, stay informed, be safe, and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.